David, after 17 years, we're eliminating your position, my boss said with a finality that cut through the air like a knife. Please clear your desk by the end of the day. My name is David Winston. I'm 54 years old, and until Monday morning, I was a senior systems analyst at Britton Technologies in Columbus, Ohio. For nearly 2 decades, I had been the backbone of the IT department, witnessing the evolution from dial-up connections to cloud migrations. 3 CEOs had come and gone, yet I remained steadfast, training every new hire, recovering every lost file, working weekends and holidays without ever asking for a raise or a pat on the back. So when Peter called me into his office, with Liza from HR already seated, I sensed the storm brewing even before he uttered a word. The atmosphere had shifted weeks ago. I completely understand, I said, nodding once. I walked out without uttering another word. No anger, no pleas, just a quiet acceptance. Back at my desk, I noticed the younger employees glancing my way, then quickly averting their eyes back to their screens. News travels fast. Most of them were programmers I had personally trained. Good kids, but they had no idea what truly lay beneath our systems or how the old architecture functioned. None of them could navigate the software I had written, and the admin credentials were buried 3 layers deep in every system. I began methodically packing my personal belongings. A family photo, a coffee mug my son had made back in high school, a little cactus that somehow survived 17 years under fluorescent lights. Bethany from marketing stopped by, her face contorted with concern. David, I just heard. This is ridiculous. You practically built this place. I shrugged. Companies change direction. But without any warning? After everything I had done? Her voice rose, drawing attention. It's fine, I said quietly. Was it really? It didn't feel fine at all, but I wasn't about to make a scene. As I left, Peter emerged from his office to watch me go. No farewell, no handshake. Just a cold gaze to ensure I was really leaving. What none of them had bothered to notice over the years was that I had become the most critical person in the entire building. Not because I was exceptional, but because I was meticulous. I documented everything. I had set up secure audit protocols years ago to track unauthorized access at the request of the legal team during the last scandal. I had copies of everything. In my car, I sat for a moment, gazing at the 12-story building where I had spent most of my adult life. The security badge I had just surrendered had been updated 16 times. I started the engine and drove home. They had no idea what was coming. I had been with Britton since it was just 2 floors in a business park. It all began when my daughter Olivia was in kindergarten. Now she was graduating from graduate school. As I drove, memories flooded back. Late nights spent troubleshooting, the camaraderie of my colleagues, the pride I felt in building something meaningful. But now, all that was left was a hollow ache and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Little did they know I had a plan. I had been quietly preparing for this moment, gathering knowledge and skills that would soon turn the tables. The environment was about to get a lot more interesting, and I was ready to show them just how much I knew. The company flourished, and I grew alongside it. I turned down offers from competitors because loyalty meant everything to me. My wife, Taylor, often joked that the waitstaff at our favorite diner were my second family. She wasn't entirely wrong. I knew every system, every workaround, every hack to problem solving that the executives didn't even know existed. The infrastructure I built survived 3 acquisitions and countless innovations that management embraced only to discard months later. Peter became my boss 5 years ago, a young MBA type who referred to our department as IT resources instead of people. He had grand ideas about optimization, efficiency, and digital transformation, buzzwords that usually meant doing more with less. At first, I tried to help him understand our systems, their complexities buried under years of growth and adaptation. We need to be ready for the future, he would say in meetings, looking right past me. 6 months ago, he brought in a consultant named Jason Garcia. Dressed in an expensive suit with a firm handshake and a Stanford diploma prominently displayed on his LinkedIn profile, Jason quickly became a fixture in our conference rooms. whispering with Peter as I walked by. 3 months ago, I noticed my access rights were being subtly altered. Nothing overt, just small changes in administrative control. I could have protested, but instead I observed and documented. "You've seemed a bit distracted lately," Taylor said one evening as we sat on the porch. "Is everything okay at work?" I nodded, sipping my beer. Just changes. Nothing I hadn't seen before. But these changes felt different. I was being sidelined in meetings. Emails about system updates stopped coming my way. Junior team members were assigned to projects I usually handled. Then I found it. A company-wide memo about modernization initiatives that had never been shared with me. It outlined a complete restructuring of the IT department under the new leadership of Jason Garcia. My position wasn't even listed in the organizational chart. That same day, I discovered something else. While performing my usual security scans, one of those background tasks that no one else bothered with, I noticed unusual patterns in our financial software. Regular transfers to an unfamiliar vendor. Boston Solutions. A quick search revealed it had been registered only the previous year, with a legal address leading to a UPS store. Authorized payments started small but grew larger each month. I said nothing, just noted it down, rewriting records and continuing to watch. Sometimes the quiet person in the corner sees everything precisely because everyone thinks he sees nothing. The morning after I was fired, I sat in my home office staring at my personal laptop. No alarms had woken me. No commutes awaited. Just silence and the weight of what had happened. Taylor brought me coffee and silently set it down beside me. After 19 years of marriage, she knew when I needed space. "I'm heading to the store," she finally said. "Need anything?" I shook my head. After she left, I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a flash drive. One of the few I kept secure. As I held it in my hand, memories flooded back. Years of dedication, loyalty, and the quiet knowledge that I had built something significant. But now it was time to turn the tables. I had information, and I was ready to use it. The game was just beginning, and I was no longer a pawn. Company policy strictly prohibits data deletion. But years ago, when the legal team needed an audit system to track potential insider threats, I made it clear that I needed backups off-site. They signed off on it, and then quickly forgot. I plugged in the flash drive and began sifting through the files. Internal emails. Meeting minutes I shouldn't have had access to. Financial documents that ordinary employees would never see. There it was. The complete history of payments to Boston Solutions Group. Almost $1.8 million over 18 months. A chain of approvals led directly to our CFO, Richard Anderson. I dug deeper, cross-referencing dates and figures until a pattern emerged. The payments perfectly coincided with a series of software license renewals for systems we used company-wide, but the amounts were inflated, sometimes by 15%, sometimes by 20%. Just small enough not to raise immediate red flags. Big enough to add up. I pulled up the business registration for Boston Solutions Group. The registered owner was Thomas Anderson. A quick social media search confirmed my suspicions. Richard's brother-in-law. They were siphoning funds from the company through fake markups on legitimate expenses. I leaned back in my chair, feeling something shift within me. Not anger, not at all. Something colder, more focused. For 17 years, I had solved problems, fixed systems, and protected data. I was reliable. A constant presence that never stirred the waters, and they tossed me aside like outdated hardware. My phone buzzed with a message from Stephen, the junior analyst I had mentored for the past 2 years. "Sorry about yesterday. What they did is complete nonsense. Garcia is already moving into your old office." I hung up without responding. Now all the pieces fell into place. Peter and the CFO wanted me gone before anyone could connect the dots in their scheme. They probably thought the evidence would vanish along with me, that I was just some aging tech guy who didn't understand modern finance. I opened my email and began drafting a message to the board of directors. Then I paused, hovering my finger over the send button. too straightforward, too easy to dismiss the bitter accusations of a fired employee. I needed leverage, precision, a way to expose the fraud that couldn't be ignored or hidden. I deleted the draft and began to strategize. Tomorrow was Wednesday, board meeting day. Quarterly financials would be presented. Bonuses would be approved. The perfect time. I closed my laptop and walked to the living room window, gazing out at the neighborhood where we had raised our children and built our lives. The weight of the world felt heavy on my shoulders, but I was no longer just a victim. I was a man with a plan, ready to reclaim my narrative and expose the truth. The calm before the storm was upon me, and I was prepared to unleash it. For the first time. Since yesterday, I smiled. On Wednesday morning, I sat in my car across the street from Britton's headquarters, watching employees pass through the revolving doors. On the passenger seat was my laptop, logged into an email account I had created years ago for security testing. One of the accounts seemed to have come from the company's internal domain but wasn't tracked in the main directory. At exactly 9:15 a.m., I made my first move, an email to Peter with the subject line, "Financial Irregularities, Urgent Review Needed," outlining what I had discovered regarding the payments to Boston. I included just enough detail to be credible but didn't mention the connection to his brother-in-law. If Peter was involved, he would panic. If not, he would launch an investigation. Either way, I would learn something. At 9:45, my phone rang. Peter's number. I sent it to voicemail. His message was brief. "David, we need to discuss your email immediately. Call me back." I didn't. Instead, I drove to a cafe, set up my laptop, and waited. At 10:30, another email arrived. This one was from Liza in HR. "Mr. Winston, we received a concerning message from you that potentially violates your separation agreement. Please cease all contact with Boston employees and remember your obligations regarding confidentiality. Any further communications may result in legal action." So this was how they played it. Threaten. Fire. Isolate. I hadn't signed any separation agreement. At noon, I drove to my bank and approached my safety deposit box. Inside was another backup, older but containing crucial information I hadn't included in my usual rounds. Among the files were the original security protocols I had developed, including documentation of who had access to which systems and when changes were made. According to these records, Richard Anderson had personally requested elevated access to the financial approval systems 18 months ago, right when the higher payments began. Returning home, I found 3 missed calls: Peter, Liza, and now Jason Garcia. I hadn't expected him to intervene so quickly. Interesting. I checked my personal email and found a message from Steven marked urgent. "David, they say you sent some crazy email about financial misconduct. Garcia called an emergency meeting. Everyone's talking. They're cutting you off from everything, even historical materials we need to do our jobs. What's going on?" Poor kid, caught in the crossfire. I sent a brief reply. "Don't get involved, Steven. Just watch." At 3 p.m., my home phone rang, a number I hadn't used for business in years. I picked up the receiver but said nothing. "David? It's Richard Anderson." The tension in the air was palpable. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. This was it, the confrontation I had been waiting for. I took a deep breath, ready to play my hand. His voice was steady, controlled. "We need to talk about your concerns. I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Is that what you call it?" I asked. "Listen, transition periods are always difficult. If you have questions about the company's finances, there are appropriate channels." "Like the board?" I interrupted him. So, silence. "The board doesn't need to worry about operational details." "Why don't we meet tomorrow? Just you and me, we can clarify this." "Sorry, I'm busy tomorrow," I replied. "Besides, I think the board might be very interested in Boston Solutions Group and your brother-in-law." A sharp intake of breath told me everything I needed to know. "You're making a serious mistake," he finally said. "We can fix this. A generous severance package. References, everything you need." "Goodbye, Richard," I said, and hung up. 10 minutes later, Liza emailed me again. Suddenly, my severance package had doubled, accompanied by an agreement requiring my complete confidentiality on all company matters. They were scrambling now, but they still thought they were dealing with a simple extortion attempt. They had no idea what was coming. Thursday morning brought clarity and confirmation. I spent the night combing through years of data, connecting the dots I had previously overlooked. The Boston scheme wasn't Richard's first creative accounting project. 3 years ago, shortly after he became CFO, another pattern emerged. Consulting services from a firm called Lakeside Business Solutions. Different name, same game. Inflated invoices for partially or non-delivered services. I traced the registration for Lakeside. It led to Patricia Anderson, Richard's wife. A woman who appeared to be the CEO of a company that had no website, no employees, and no virtual office address. But the bigger revelation came when I dug into the email archives. Peter didn't just know about these arrangements, he had been facilitating them. In exchange, his department received budget increases while others faced cuts. He was brought in specifically because the previous director had started asking questions about IT expenses. Even Jason Garcia was involved. His consulting firm was hired through an unusual process that bypassed standard procurement channels. His real role wasn't to modernize IT, but to eliminate the one person who might notice the financial patterns. Me. The scheme was elegant in its simplicity. Create legitimate-looking vendors, approve inflated payments, and split the difference. Since real services were provided only at inflated rates, auditors scanning for outright fraudulent payments would miss them. Over 3 years, they siphoned off nearly $4.3 million. I compiled everything into a detailed report. Spreadsheets showing the pattern of increases, business registrations linking the companies to Richard's family, email correspondence evidencing Peter's knowledge and involvement. Then I did what they didn't expect. I reached out to Martin Moore, a board member I had worked with years ago during the security system implementation. I needed an ally, someone who could see the truth behind the facade. As I typed out my message, I felt a surge of determination. This was no longer just about revenge, it was about justice. It was time to expose the rot at the core of Britton Technologies. Now he was half retired, but still attended quarterly meetings. "David Winston," he said, answering on the second ring. A long pause. "I heard you left Boston." "Not by choice," I replied. "Martin, I need 15 minutes of your time. It's important." Silence. This was why Richard and Peter were so tightly knit and looked so tense. "Yesterday's board meeting was intense," he finally said. "I always thought you knew where the bodies were buried." "Where can we meet?" An hour later, we were sitting in a park 3 miles from headquarters. I handed him a sealed envelope containing a printed report and a flash drive. "Here it is," I said. "Dates, amounts, connections. I'm not looking for my job back. I'm not looking for money. I just want the right people to know about this." Martin studied me. "Why come to me?" "Because you actually read the audit reports. I've watched you in meetings. You ask questions." He nodded slowly. "There's an emergency board meeting tomorrow. Financial committee review. Good timing." "David," he said, slipping the envelope into his pocket. "If this happens, there will be serious consequences." "I'm counting on it." As I returned to my car, my phone buzzed with a message from Taylor. "Someone named Jason Garcia had come by the house looking for you. Said it was urgent." "I told him you were gone." "They're in a panic." Good. That day, I received job offers from 2 competing firms. Both positions significantly exceeded my previous role. Both offered substantial signing bonuses. Rumors of my sudden availability were circulating. I ignored them. This wasn't about finding another job. This was about finishing what I had started. That night, using credentials that should have been revoked but weren't, thanks to Jason's careless transition in IT, I accessed the company's email server one last time. I scheduled a message to be delivered to every board member tomorrow at 8 a.m. Before approving, take note of the two bonuses. Read this. Attached was my full report. Friday morning dawned clear and bright. I sat on the porch with my coffee, watching the neighbors wake up. No alarm clock, no commute, just waiting. At exactly 8 a.m., my scheduled email delivered its payload to the board members. By 8:17, my phone began to ring. Numbers I didn't recognize. Probably assistants trying to reach me. I let them all go to voicemail. The storm was brewing, and I was ready to watch it unfold. At 9 a.m., the Emergency Financial Committee meeting was set to begin. Martin Moore would be there with my documents in hand, watching the reactions as my email was discovered and discussed. At 9:32, Stephen sent a message. The police are here. They're interrogating Anderson and Peter in the conference rooms. Garcia looks sick. What did you do? I didn't respond. The wheels were turning exactly as I had anticipated. By 10 a.m., the chief legal counsel of Britton called. Unlike the others, I answered this one. Mr. Winston, this is Patricia Graves from the legal department. We need you to come in immediately to discuss the information you provided to the board. I'm available by phone, I replied. This really requires an in-person discussion. No, it doesn't, I interrupted calmly. Everything I know is in that report. Everything I have is already secured in multiple safe locations. If anything happens to me or my family, additional copies will be sent to the SEC, the IRS, and 3 news agencies. Silence. Mr. Winston, she finally said in a carefully measured tone. The board is taking this extremely seriously. They've already placed several executives on administrative leave during the investigation. They would appreciate your cooperation. I have fully cooperated by providing complete documentation. My part is done. After she hung up, I drove to a diner 20 miles outside of Columbus. There was no sense in being close today. During lunch, news began to break on local business sites. Britton Technologies' leadership was under investigation for financial misconduct. No names yet, but they would come. At 2 p.m., Martin Moore called. It's a bloodbath, he said without preamble. Richard confessed when we presented him with your evidence. We're trying to strike a deal, pinning the pressure on Peter. Is Peter denying everything? Yes, and Garcia claims he was just a consultant who didn't understand financial matters. The board isn't buying it. We've suspended all 3 companies pending further investigation. Money? Forensic accountants are coming in on Monday. Preliminary estimates show at least $4.5 million has been redirected over 3 years. Maybe more. I nodded to myself. I was close to this. The board wants to talk to you, Martin continued. About coming back, not just to your old position. They're creating a new role for a chief security officer. Reporting directly to the board. I had expected such an opportunity, but I was still surprised. I'll think about it, I said. That evening, I told Taylor everything. She listened without interrupting, then asked, What do you want to do? A good question. The revenge was complete. The people who had pushed me out were now being pushed aside. Criminal charges were likely to follow. As I sat there contemplating my next move, I realized that this was more than just a personal victory. It was a chance to reshape my future, to take control of my narrative, and to ensure that the truth would prevail. The game had changed, and I was ready to play it on my terms. Justice had triumphed, cold and precise. But returning to Britain meant going back to a place that had cast me aside after 17 years of service. Could I do it? Did I want to? I need time to make a decision, I finally said. Later that night, I opened my laptop one last time and posted a single message on my LinkedIn profile. Never burn bridges. Just let them collapse under the weight of their own greed. Within minutes, former colleagues began reaching out. Rumors were spreading. The guy from Quiet Systems had fired 3 executives without raising his voice. By Monday, everyone would know exactly who they had underestimated. On Monday morning, I walked into Britton's headquarters in a suit I hadn't needed in years. The guard did a double take and quickly printed me a visitor badge. "Welcome back, Mr. Winston," he said with newfound respect. The elevator ride to the executive floor was quiet. I had never had a reason to visit this level before. Now I was awaited in the conference room. 10 board members sat around the polished table. Martin Moore nodded slightly as I entered. The interim CEO, who had previously served as COO, looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Winston," she began, "thank you for coming. The situation you uncovered is unprecedented." I remained silent. "The full scale of the fraud looks worse than initially reported," she continued. "The forensic audit has revealed nearly $5.2 million in misappropriated funds. Criminal charges are being prepared." Still, I waited. Martin cleared his throat. "David, the board has unanimously voted to create a new executive position, Chief Information Security Officer. Full executive privileges, reporting structure directly to the board. We would like to offer you this role." I placed my folder on the table. "Inside, you'll find my terms," I said. "Non-negotiable." The CEO opened it, quickly scanning the contents. Her eyebrows raised. "Full audit authority across all departments, an independent budget, veto power over financial technology decisions." I nodded once. "That's unusual," she said. "Just like the embezzlement of $5.2 million, I replied. "It happened because no one was watching. Now someone will." Silence fell over the room. "You have until noon," I said, standing. "I have other offers." As I turned to leave, Martin asked, "Did you plan all this, David?" I paused at the door. I didn't plan to be fired after 17 years. Everything that followed was simply what I had always done, identifying system vulnerabilities and implementing appropriate security measures. At 11:47, my phone rang. They accepted all the terms. 6 months later, I sat in my new corner office, reviewing security protocols for the upcoming quarter. The view overlooked the Columbus skyline, a daily reminder of how much had changed. Richard Anderson had pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud. Justice had been served, and I was ready to ensure that it would never happen again. The past was behind me, and the future was mine to shape. In exchange for his cooperation, he would receive a lighter sentence. Still significant. Peter was fighting the charges, insisting he had no knowledge of the scheme, despite the evidence. Jason Garcia fled to Brazil but was extradited. The money was returned. Well, most of it. Enough to spare the company from serious financial damage. My former team now reported to me, although I had appointed Steven to handle day-to-day operations. The kid had potential. He just needed someone to see it. A knock at the door drew my attention. Taylor stood there, smiling. "Ready for lunch?" she asked. I nodded, grabbing my jacket. As we walked through the IT department, conversations briefly hushed. Not out of fear, but out of respect. These people knew what had happened. They understood that I could have destroyed the company instead of saving it. In the elevator, Taylor squeezed my hand. "Happy?" I pondered the question. The anger that had driven me in the days following my firing had faded. What remained wasn't quite happiness. More like satisfaction. Closure. "I'm good," I said. Outside, the October sun warmed our faces as we walked to a nearby restaurant. My phone buzzed with a message from Martin Moore. "The board approved the security budget increase. Unanimous vote." I smiled slightly. No arguments, no questions. Just trust. Taylor noticed my expression. "What's that about?" "Nothing," I said, slipping my phone back into my pocket. "Just thinking about bridges. Some collapse under their own weight. Others, when repaired, become stronger than ever before." This time, I had built it right. As we settled into our lunch, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The past few months had been a whirlwind, but I had emerged not just intact, but empowered. I was ready to lead, to protect, and to ensure that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. With Taylor by my side, I knew I could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The future was bright, and I was ready to embrace it.